and welcome to today's episode of the Untold with me, your host Abdullah Al-Hindiani. For today's episode, we have Dr. Ahmad AlMazeedi, who, as you all are going to be surprised about, he's not going to be talking to us about his role in the medical field. He's actually going to be highlighting, financial responsibility and how people can be better aware of their financials. Today's episode is going to be all about how you spend your money and how to better save your money. So with that in mind, stay tuned till after the break. And we're back with Ahmad AlMazeedi, who, if you are a person, I would say, because your topic, affects all kinds of people. And it's something that not a lot of people, unfortunately, know about. If you are a person who has financial problems and financial insecurities, today's episode and today's guest is for you. I'd like to first welcome you on the show, Ahmad AlMazeedi. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And let's talk about you personally and specifically. Your, I would say, field of expertise is something very niche, right? So what drew you into this kind of field?
Well, I think you said it out nicely in the beginning, is that it's something that affects all of our lives, and it affects it throughout our lives as well. From when we start in high school and when our parents give us allowances, we have to manage that money and we have to decide what we're going to buy and what we're not going to buy. So really from then, the decision making begins, and those decisions are going to affect us for the rest of our lives, and the habits that we form we take into our adult lives. And then the people who have good habits, good financial habits, are the people who are going to be able to achieve the goals that they have, buying a home, sending their kids to private schools, providing the good life to them, and the people who don't, unfortunately, fall behind. So that's why I feel like it's a very important topic to focus on. And it can improve a lot of people's lives if done well.
Yeah. And honestly, speaking of the importance of this topic, because I know that in the United States, there's a movement to make finance responsibility, something like that, a mandatory class in schools.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, there's a movement to make it within the education curriculum, right? Because it's for a lot of people who go into the world, they have zero financial responsibility. So it's always great to educate them, right? Tell them all about how to deal with their finances.
Absolutely. I think that the onus in the past was on parents to teach their kids, but really you can't really depend on parents from different backgrounds who've been through different experiences to give children the right information on money. I mean, that's why there's a whole field of finance and accounting that you have to specialize in to become an expert in those things. So it's, I think, ridiculous to assume that everyone is just going to passively acquire this information without any form of education. So I think that what you're suggesting, or what you're saying that they're doing in the United States, I think it should be applied worldwide, to be honest. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because, for, like you said, because finance, and this is maybe a sign of an educated kind of world, right? Because our place in the world right now is so expensive. It's such a money dependent kind of situation. It wasn't like this before. So that's why, like you said, the older generation didn't have a lot of emphasis on their understanding of the value of money.
Absolutely. They lived in a different world. They lived in a world where you could probably support a household with one income. And you could afford to have a stay-at-home mom who is able to take care of the kids with her full attention. The kids lived better lives that way, that I believe. It's maybe a traditional way of looking at things, but now it's almost mandatory that both parents have to be working just to meet the basic needs of life, not even to live luxuriously. So yeah, times have changed, and unfortunately we came into it a little bit unprepared, but I think that a lot of content has been coming through social media and, as you said, throughout school curriculums that is helping people get through this, and I hope to be a small part of that.
I mean, hopefully. And so why do you think a lot of people fall into the trap of spending a lot of money, something that they obviously can't afford, but they still do it nonetheless?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, to be honest. I don't think that it's just one element, but I think a very big reason, at least in Kuwait, that I have noticed is idleness. I don't think some people have enough filling their lives that gives them gratification and satisfaction, that they don't have to go to cheap sources of dopamine, like spending, like watching TikTok, for example, or going through doom scrolls on Instagram. I think that those are cheap sources of dopamine that people use to fill their lives quickly and to relieve pressures and what have you. And I think that comes from childhood. You know, if parents are not pushing their kids to develop hobbies and to develop the discipline that it needs to get the gratification from those hobbies, like art, like playing chess, for example, or playing sports. If someone doesn't have those things in their life, they're going to go after cheap sources of dopamine,
Yeah.
like overspending. So I think that's one part of it. And another big part is unfortunately social media. Let's say 100 years ago, who would you compare yourself to? You know, you could look to your neighbor, maybe you could look to your friend or colleague at work,
Yeah.
but that was really the extent of the social circle that you can compare yourself to. Now you can very easily compare yourself to kings and queens, to princes, to entrepreneurs, to billionaires, and you can see their life basically on full fold.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to be satisfied and content with your own life and with the means that you have, without trying to get to there. So it's like the keeping up with the Joneses cycle
Yeah.
that we fall into. I think those probably are the two main reasons that people overspend here, at least.
And I do like how you emphasize that a lot of those reasons kind of boil down to our more digitalized kind of world, right? It's our modern. Because I do remember reading, it was either a study or an article where they were studying this, and they, in the study, and maybe you can share with us more, in terms of your studies, they said that they had people who were paying by cash and then people who were paying by KNet or digital means, right? And the people who were paying by digital means, they were buying more because the value of money loses a lot of its significance if it's digital, right? If it's just numbers. It's like if you see 20 KD in your hand, you're less likely to buy something from buying it digitally.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. I think money in general or value has lost its concreteness and has
Yeah.
become more abstract as time went on. You know, if I take your point and I extrapolate it further back in history, I don't want to go too far back, but we used to see money as gold, which is a very heavy physical object that you can see as the reward that you got for your labor.
Yeah.
You can feel it, you can touch it, you can see that it's valuable, you can see that it's rare, and then it progressed on to paper. You know, okay, you can still see the paper, you can still feel it, but in the end, it's still a piece of paper. And now, as you said, it's just zeros and ones on a screen.
Yeah.
So it has become much more abstract, and it's much more difficult to grasp the concept. But I think, and this is one of the techniques that I try to teach the people in my courses, to re-engage them with money as a true reflection of their value, is to view it as a reflection of time.
Okay.
Because when you sacrifice time during your labor, you're doing this interview with me, you're getting paid to do it. So the money that you get is not just a number, it is the reward that you get for the time you sacrificed. It is the value of 30 days of work.
Yeah.
So when you go and buy something, you're buying something in exchange for 1 day's worth of work or 2 days worth
That's
of
a
work.
great way of looking at it.
Yeah, rather than just 20 KD or 30 KD, because that's very abstract and
Yeah.
you can't really quantify that.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of talk about, financial freedom and everything. So, in your opinion, what is financial freedom?
Financial freedom, a lot of people conflate it with wealth, you know, being able to buy anything you want. I don't think that that's what financial freedom is. I believe, and this is probably the definition of financial freedom, is the ability to live a comfortable life without having to work. So basically having full control over your time and full decision making on what you want to do when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is not how most people live. Most of us, are contracted or we have government jobs that we have to go to, so we don't have full control over our time. Half of our day is controlled by someone else to fund the second half of our day.
Yeah.
And that's why the idea of financial freedom is very alluring to people, because we're drawn to it naturally. We want to have control over what we do with our lives, because we have creative energies that we want to release. Some things we'd rather do, we don't have time to do, or we don't have enough finances to do. Some people want to take their hobbies more seriously, and I think that's it's a noble goal to try and strive for, but it's a very difficult one, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of difficult kind of goals to strive for, I know that the concept of investing, especially locally, is a very difficult kind of concept to get into, right? A lot of people have fears and everything. So from your position of professionalism, would you say investing is something good for people to pursue, or is that, a very dangerous territory still for now?
I don't think it's dangerous. I don't think that's the way I'd put it. people have different personalities, and some personalities cannot take the mental stress of fluctuations that occur
Yeah.
in the markets. But there are different types of investments. For example, if you put your money in a certificate of deposit in a bank, or you buy something that's not very volatile like gold, then you're probably going to be comfortable with that, even if your personality is risk averse.
Yeah.
Having said that, I do believe that investing in the stock market has become much easier than it used to be, and there are a lot of tools such as ETFs, which are baskets that accumulate all the companies in a single economy, and they sell it to you as one stock.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to sift through hundreds and hundreds of companies and pick out the winners and avoid the losers. You can just invest in the whole economy all at once. And that's a very easy thing to do. And it kind of dilutes the risk that you would otherwise have. And that, I think, suits most people, to be honest, especially if you have a long-term horizon for why you want to invest.
Yeah.
And the why is what counts the most. To answer your question clearly, you asked, should people invest? Is that something they should do? As long as you have a good reason why you should be investing and why you should be delaying the gratification that you get from spending the money now, then you should go for it. But you have to have very clear reasons so that you do it over the long term rather than just doing it on a whim.
Yeah, speaking of doing stuff on a whim, so let's say I want to go into investing, right? Is it something that I should go like full on invest whatever I have, or is it something I should, take precautions? Because a lot of people view it as high risk, high reward, or should I take low risk with low rewards? Like, what's the best approach for new beginners?
Right. So before you start investing, you have to have a very strong financial base. So we're talking about having a secure emergency fund, which can cover you in case of any emergency, so that you don't have to tap into your investments and withdraw them on a down market. You could use your emergency fund instead. And you have to also have a very good split for your income. You have to have clear savings and clear spending habits so that you are consistently investing, whether it's in an up market or a down market, over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And if you do that, and if you have a very secure, a very clear goal in mind, then I would recommend investing. Otherwise, I would say that it's probably not for someone who wants to get rich quick. It's
Yeah.
for someone who is secure, comfortable, but wants to achieve long-term goals. That would include probably buying a house, creating financial freedom for your kids. I think those are good goals to invest for, but
Yeah.
you need to have a strong financial base to start from.
And I do want to dig more into that point, but unfortunately, we have to take a very quick break, but we'll come right back after it. And we're back with Ahmed AlMazeedi, and I want to put you on the spot because this is something my family actually are heavily invested in, which
Sure.
is gold.
Okay.
Is it something we should continue investing in? Is it something we should, pursue, or what's the equation there?
Okay, so I've been very vocal about my thoughts on gold. That's actually one of the first topics I started talking about on my channel, Naireen. And my position was quite negative, to be honest, at the time.
I think
And
it's the first time we've heard negative things about gold.
well, it's because compared to the alternatives that you have, especially for the goals people invest in gold for, you definitely want to go for the alternatives.
Yeah.
Because when you want to compare, when you want to assess whether an investment is a good investment or a bad investment, you have to look at two things. How much does it fluctuate? So how aggressively does it move up and down?
Okay.
Is it mostly stable or is it fluctuating? And what are its long-term prospects? So if you look at gold and you compare it to the stock market, for example, which is what people traditionally view as risky, over the past 50 years, they've been kind of equal in terms of riskiness, which means they both move aggressively, but the stock market has had almost double, even triple the returns of
Oh,
gold
okay, I got it.
during that
Yeah.
same time period. So you are taking the same amount of risk but you're getting way lower rewards.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if you want to say, well, I only can invest in gold, I don't really understand anything about the stock market, and if it's nothing or gold, I definitely say gold is better than nothing,
Yeah.
because it definitely retains its value better than cash, especially with the inflationary cycle that we've seen recently. So I've slightly kind of toned down my position,
Oh.
and I think it's okay if people don't want to invest in the stock market and want to go for gold. It's better than nothing.
I think for a lot of people, especially the ones that I know personally, they like the idea of investing in gold because it's something they can keep locked, under their eyes instead of something that's in a, let's say, system, right? I think that's where the fears come along. But it's not a worry these days, right?
No, I don't think it is because, with gold, most people don't store very large amounts of gold in their own houses. They usually store them in banks or in safe deposits. And you rely on the bank to keep tabs on which brick of gold belongs to who. So it's the same thing when you invest through a brokerage. You rely on the brokerage's trust and their auditing team to keep tabs on which stocks belong to who. So the tracking systems, I think, are very much secure in that sense, and I don't think that's probably a very major worry. People mostly worry about the risk that it takes to invest in stocks, and that's mostly a misconception because people are used in investing in single companies rather than a collection of companies, as is with ETFs, which are relatively safe.
Okay. And let's dive into a little bit of a tricks of the trade, I would say, from you. Do you like to play it safe, or are you kind of, risky kind of investor?
Well, I would probably categorize myself as a very boring investor.
Oh, why is that?
Because I don't really put that much effort into studying individual companies. I mostly just diversify my investments, which is what I recommend everyone to do. Because during the courses that I took with Harvard University last year, I realized how difficult it is to ascertain which companies are going to do better than others. It is extremely difficult. Most of the times you have to have insider information to be able to get a significant edge on the market. Otherwise, you should be just happy with the market return, which means that you go up with the economy and you go down with the economy. But the economy over the long term always goes up. And that's been proven as correct, especially according to John Bogle. He's the creator of the ETF, writer of my favorite book in finance. We'll get to that later.
Is it the Big
probably.
Short, the guy?
No, not the guy from The Big Short. No. So John Bogle, he wrote the book, The Little Book of Common Sense Investing,
okay.
and he's the one who created the idea of a basket of stocks, the ETF.
The ETFs,
So he made diversification very easy for the common investor and opened up that horizon to most people. So that's the way I invest. I just diversify. I don't pick stocks. And I go the long term. And that's the way I invest for myself, and that's the way I invest for my children.
This reminds me of something. I don't know, maybe it's Warren Buffett who said it, or because I'm not a financial kind of experience kind of player, but I think he said that it's best to having time in the market instead of timing the market.
Absolutely. I don't think he said that first, but he's definitely an advocate of that sentiment.
Yeah.
He stated, I think it was about 10 years ago, that he's already planned what he's going to do for his wife upon his death, that he's invested most of her money in the S&P 500, which is the American economy. And so if even Warren Buffett isn't brave enough to pick stocks for his wife, who am I to talk? I mean, he does pick stocks, of course, for his company Berkshire Hathaway, but that's a different story. That's his job. But for his own finances, when it comes to his family, he goes the safe route of diversification. And I think that people should do that too.
I think the idea of having patience, especially when it comes to money, is what a lot of people are afraid of investing, right? It's like if you tell them to put the seed now and watch the tree after 10 years, they're like, I want this year, right? I think that's where a lot of people are afraid to go into investing.
That's true. And that's why a lot of people make mistakes in investing. They are not happy, as you said, waiting for 20 years just to get, twice or three times the amount of money, because they think that it's not going to matter by then. That's probably because they're investing for the wrong reasons, or because they simply don't understand how risky it is to try and get those gains within 3 years, because the amount of risk that you have to take over 3 years to be able to achieve the returns that most people get in 20 years is simply too much. And I think history has proven this to be true, and there's a lot of research that was conducted in Hong Kong and Brazil for day traders, which is a very popular form of investing. I don't really consider trading investing, which is buying and selling during very short periods of time. The research shows abysmal numbers. Almost 98% of investors lose money,
Yeah.
and only 2% beat the market. And you can attribute that to luck, not even to skill, because you're bound to find one or two lucky people who
Yeah.
might be able to beat the market over that period of time.
Which is the big short guys we just mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So the big short guys, they made bets. They shorted the market,
Yeah.
the real estate market. They bet that it was going to go down. But shorting, which is borrowing cash to buy a stock and then selling it immediately
Yeah.
to buy it at a lower price, usually shorting doesn't work, and that's how companies get liquidated, and that's how people lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
But people think that they can do what the big short guys did.
Yeah.
Most guys can't.
Now, I think I think at this point is where a lot of people can see the the ocean and the wealth of knowledge that comes to financing and investing, right? We only scratch the tip of the iceberg by mentioning so many of these. I think that's why investing is so, I would say, astonishing to people. Yeah.
Absolutely, there's a lot to learn. It can be daunting, but I think once you realize that you don't have to put that much effort into it as a layperson, we don't have to pretend to be experts. We just have to know enough to make smart decisions over the long term and slowly put our money into the stock market, invest in a broad way, in a broad, diversified way, and as long as the economy keeps going up, our wealth grows with it. But we need to have discipline. We need to have clear-cut goals. And we need not to be distracted by the noise, because a lot of people say, oh, is this a good time to start investing? Should I wait until the crash? Or what if a war breaks out?
Yeah.
And I always think back to a book I read by Morgan Housel called Same as Ever, which is a great way to focus yourselves on what never changes throughout time. There will always be wars. There will always be economic and there will always be political instability. And we shouldn't be distracted by those things, because throughout time, the world has recovered from wars, the world has recovered from political instability, and market returns have actually been better during times of turmoil. So, if anything, now is a great time to invest, even probably the best ever.
Yeah, because a lot of changing, because all of the things are related, right?
Absolutely.
Because I have one of my friends who is into investing, and whenever we're at the gatherings, Duaniyas, he's always saying like, "Oh, this company hired this year." Oh, I'm like, why do you even know that? And then he's like, because every kind of information, even if it's something completely unrelated, like he knows if a company changed from buying like metal to a different kind of metal. I'm like, why do you even know that? And then he's like, everything is connected. Everything affects the stock price.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you know what the problem is? I don't know what your friend does for a living, but your friend is not.
He's a teacher.
Okay, I mean, good for him. I mean that's great, but he's no financial expert.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do this full time. People do this full time for a living, and 80% of them can't beat the market.
Yeah.
So who are we to say that we can? The news that the CEO was hired for any specific company is public news. Everyone knows that this has happened.
Yeah.
So it's already priced into the stock that this CEO will do X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
This is not some new revelation. People with insider information that we do not have access to, those are the people who have the ability to beat the market. And I think that we shouldn't rely on our superficial analysis of companies to be able to beat the market. It's, I think, an illusion that we like to create for ourselves that we have influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's an illusion. People have, a false sense of confidence if they feel like they know a lot
Absolutely.
of things.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
The less you know, the more confident you
The
feel.
more confident.
But the more you know, the more you know that you don't know anything. So that's the position that I take.
That's a dilemma.
It is a dilemma.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We did go through that you have a period in Harvard, and I want to ask you about that specific period of time. Like, what was it like? Talk me through it.
Absolutely. So it's a series of online courses that I took last year with Harvard University to get a certificate of specialization in finance and accounting. It was very eye-opening, and I learned a lot from that course. The main thing that I probably took away from it was how difficult it is to analyze companies and how to assess their liabilities against their assets and how to predict long-term cash flows. It is an extremely difficult process, and you need to have individual industry knowledge to be able to assess whether that company is going to do well or not.
Yeah.
And you need to have multiple scenarios. You need to have a base case, a conservative case, and a bull case. It's very difficult to do those things when you are not based where the company is, or if you're not an industry expert. So that's what pisses me off when I see online people trying to predict what's going to happen in individual companies, because you're not there. You don't know what's happening with that company.
There's a lot of information overload.
That's why it really makes me angry when I see people online trying to make predictions on what's going to happen with certain stocks, because we don't have enough information to make those predictions. The amount of time that goes into analyzing how much money companies are going to make and the idiosyncratic individual risks that they're exposed to is an extremely difficult process that I think probably even hedge funds struggle to come up with.
Yeah. And because we are running out of, time, I do want to leave you with one question, and I think it's a very important question. Because asking people to make drastic changes is something hard. So what is one small change people can do to maybe alter their financial irresponsibility in a good way?
I think that the main thing that certainly helped me, and it helped the people around me that asked me that question, is to reflect, have a moment of truth with yourself, and write down what you really want to achieve over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Because once you have a clear goal, then you're going to be able to readjust and restructure your life in order to achieve that goal. So, for example, if someone really wants to travel, and I'll use that as a simple example, if you really want to travel next year and you're not able to save up the money to be able to make that travel with your friends or with your family, then you have to make changes. And if you write down exactly why you want to travel, you're going to be able to readjust your budget and save over the course of 6 and 12 months and be able to achieve that goal. And that's a very simple way of putting it, but really it's all about setting specific goals that you can sacrifice short-term gratification for long-term happiness for.
Yeah. And I think that's a very beautiful message to end the episode on, is that if you visualize your goals and actually put them down, you can see the path to actually achieve them, right? Instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to be traveling in a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to be deliberate with the way we spend our time. And this is something I didn't think that we were going to get into, but I think this is an appropriate place to mention it. My father died last year, and it was towards the end of the year, and I didn't realize probably until after his death that I was letting my life consume me, and I wasn't really living deliberately.
Yeah.
And that's when I sat with myself and I said, what really matters in life? And what really matters in life is time spent with family.
Right.
And so all of my goals are oriented towards that now. I try to spend as much time as I can with my family. And I think that if people do the same thing with finances, they'll see that the results that they get are tremendous.
And honestly, that's a beautiful way to wrap this whole episode on, is that, time equals money, money equals time. And the more time you spend with your family is, that's even more time you're happy about
You
spending
can't,
all that.
absolutely, you
Yeah.
can't put a price tag on that. And
Yeah.
that's the most important thing in the world. So no matter how much we feel stressed about money, in the end, we should really focus on the people around us and how that money can serve us in our own lives to make us happy. Because what is money if it doesn't make us happy?
Right. And on that note, I do want to thank you again for joining us, AlMazeedi. This was very highlighting. This was very, for me personally, this was very educational. So thank you, and thank you again.
Thanks, man. Lovely meeting you, and thank you so much for hosting me, and thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you. And with that, we've reached the end of the conversation segment of The Untold, but stay tuned after the break. With that, we've reached the end of the time we've had on The Untold for today's episode. It was a very highlighting moment for me personally, because as someone who suffers with great financial irresponsibility, it's a great time to sit with AlMazeedi, talk to him about, how to be more responsible with my financials, with my spending. But unfortunately, that was all the time we've had on The Untold. Until next time, goodbye for now.